What's up, Thumpers? Welcome to a spoiler review. I'm going to tell you this right at the top of this video. A spoiler review of Marvel Studios' Avengers Endgame, the 22nd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or as it's now been coined, the Infinity Saga. I'm so excited to talk about the spoilers in this movie. We did a non-spoiler review that we put up on Patreon, and then we released it on YouTube. Guys, if you don't know about the Patreon, we recently relaunched the Patreon. We just hit our first goal, which is doing movie commentaries. So at the beginning of every month, we're going to do a new poll where you guys can vote on movies that we can talk about, stuff from the MCU, DC stuff, Star Wars stuff, but we're not going to limit ourselves to just stuff related to superheroes. This gentleman over here has not seen a lot of the Fast and the Furious movies.
Right.
Oh! So there's opportunities to do a lot of those movies
Emily
as well.
hasn't seen it either, apparently.
This gentleman over here hasn't read Invincible, the comic book series.
Yes. Right, so we're doing
And
that.
that is another goal later on.
This Patreon is about the potentiality. The potentiality of what we could do together.
We're in the United States of space.
Us, don't worry about that shit.
We
got
got
that
that
shit
covered.
Focus on space. The potentiality.
So everyone who's watching this early, you're all part of the Patreon, so you get early access. This will obviously then debut on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, it is a spoiler review, so we're going to get into it because we put out the non-spoiler review, and people are like, great. Give us the spoiler review so we can actually talk about it. But we want to make sure that like people had the opportunity to see the movie first.
Yeah. I'm excited just to be able to talk to someone, and we're not. I just want to be able to talk about it loudly and be like, "Oh my god!" without worrying if there's anyone around.
He's
gone. He's gone.
So
he said he would. We weren't allowed to talk about the movie day because he said he would quit his job.
Yes.
So we are in a safe space.
We're in a safe space.
Full spoilers are going to be said.
Exactly. So if you have not seen the movie yet, sorry.
First spoiler.
First,
this episode is brought to you by Burger King.
Yes.
It's brought to you by Tony Stark's death.
Yes,
it's brought to you by Tony Stark's death.
So this was something that we talked about. So Augie, myself, and Hector saw the movie on Tuesday at Walt Disney, and then we had to kind of be silent for 2 days because nobody else had a chance to see it yet. Right. But now Zach has seen it, obviously, because he's doing the review with us. But we figured...
Welcome, by the way, Zach.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome.
We figured it was very appropriate to honor Robert Downey Jr., honor Iron Man.
I want an American cheeseburger.
American cheeseburger
from
cheeseburger. Burger King.
And beers.
And beers.
This cold one is for Tony Stark.
Guys, it's the all-American burger right here.
I mean,
cheers.
No, but okay, sure, yeah.
Cheers. Cheers.
In honor of
Tony
Iron
Stark.
Man.
Coming back from the cave.
Yes.
Where he built a suit with a box of scraps.
So... Spoiler: Iron Man does die, obviously. But before we
said spoilers.
I know. Before we get into all that, I want to go down the line, starting with Hector, and I want to get everyone's first impression after we saw it the first time. The credits roll. First of all, probably the coolest end credits of any Marvel movie. But once we get to the end of the credits,
signatures.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? Because the non-spoiler review, you very much were just like it was.
My thoughts were. My thoughts were, I saw somebody making fun of people reviewing and talking about Endgame, and they had like a bingo card where like reviewers are going to use these words. They're going to say it's the best one yet. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to release a ranked listing where it puts Avengers Endgame at the top after only one viewing. These are all cliche things that fanboys are going to do.
Okay.
You know, internet web places are going to do it. I had that in the back of my head after I watched it the first time, and after I watched it the first time, I was like, yeah, it's my favorite one of all of these.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I didn't want to commit to that because I'm like, I'm not trying to be a cliche, but God damn it, this movie.
How are you being a cliche? This is like
it's
an honest reaction.
It's personal to me. It's a thing that I've been invested in since I was 5. It's a crazy. There's no words to describe like what this was able to do for me. I said in the non-spoiler review, of all of my years of reading comic books and the emotions I felt, this was able to tap into that and even go further in a way where I'm like, I've fist pumped while reading comic books. I've cried. I've done all that stuff. And this movie had all of that, plus the added thing of like finality.
Yeah.
These characters that have lived in Marvel, you know, Spider-Man was 15 years old in 1962, and now he's 28. Like, they age so slowly. And every time Sam Wilson's been Cap, Steve, a couple years later, is going to get it.
Yeah.
Anytime Jane Foster's been
Hell,
Thor,
even when Steve's been old, a fucking
it's undone.
Infinity
It's undone.
The Cube's going to come in and undo it.
Spider-Man and Mary Jane were married since 1987.
I don't want to talk about that. We're
2006.
not going to talk about it.
All I'm saying is that with the very nature of those comic books, and the same is true with DC, they're cyclical. Because of their nature, they constantly sort of reboot, soft reboot. They keep things young. So this movie made me realize – I'm having some trouble with my mic. Sorry, everybody. I'll just put it right in my mouth. that like they're allowing the actors and characters to age.
Right.
Which means that these things are not forever.
Right.
And the criticism, which I understand, is like, oh, a lot of these movies are so the same, and I'm sick of these Marvel movies. And it's like now it made me reframe them and go, this is all we got.
Yeah.
Iron Man has tons of stories in the comic books, but he had like 7 in the movies, and that's it. No more Tony Stark, Iron Man, done.
Right.
So now I'm like, oh my God, I super love Iron Man 3. That's one of his only movies. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Thor: The Dark World. Let me revisit it. It's actually great.
Yeah.
No,
you know.
it actually is.
Yeah.
This is the fucking. We've rewatched everything to get ready for this. And Adam and I talk about this almost every day because every morning it's like, oh, let's talk about Marvel shit again. The movie's coming up.
Because why not?
And seriously, you go back and you rewatch these. It's like we were so hard on them at the time, but also because Marvel set a standard that is stupid.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Because they'll come out with a movie that's just so good, and then you'll get disappointed by one. But now that we're at the end, and you go back, you're like, this is fucking special.
It's absolutely special.
Everything matters.
So
exactly.
Right. That was my initial feeling, and I didn't want to commit to that because I didn't want to be a cliche. I watched it again last night, second time, and I'm like happy to report. I'm like, no, that's how I feel, and I can't judge this movie on its own as a living in a vacuum and being like, what about its own narrative? Because that's not what it is. It's a meta narrative about everything up to this point, about all 22 movies. It's reflecting back on the audience, and it's saying, hey, thank you for like sticking with us from the beginning and for being so jazzed about Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man and for being so stoked about the potentiality of him saying, I am Iron Man, that we're going to pay it back. We're going to tell you
we're going to bookend it.
We're going to bookend it. We're going to give some characters happy endings. We're going to give some characters tragic but perfect endings. And the thing I'm like most excited about is Sam Wilson as Cap. Guardians of the Galaxy with Thor.
The Asgardians of the Galaxy.
With chubby Thor.
Chubby Thor.
Not just regular Thor, chubby Thor.
The
fact that Spider-Man and Black Panther and Doctor Strange are still here. Captain Marvel's still here. And then, of course, the scene I'll never forget, Emily's reaction, is all of the female characters.
Oh, my God.
And to me, that was all a promise of, like, look, we know that our Avengers characters up to this point have mostly been white dudes named Chris.
Yeah.
But, like, we were, for better and for worse, following the Silver Age of comics where most of those characters were male characters. But we understand what Marvel can do, and we want to move forward.
Right.
So, like, all of that, you know, with goodbye to these amazing characters, let's move forward. My overall review is it's my favorite, and it's tough to qualify it as just a movie because it's kind of like it's summing up my life and my experience and my comic book reading experience and my childhood experience. I didn't just jump into these in 2008. Like, I've been a fan of these characters since I was 5. So, like, it's all of that summed up and makes me hopeful, and there's really strong political messages in there when Cap says, this is the only world we got. I'm like, that feels like that is for us.
Yeah, that is for now.
With everything that people are going through now. And, so it's my favorite, and I think it's like a ridiculous achievement. Do I think it's a perfect movie? No, but it's not. Again, it's not even a movie. It's like it's like a moment in time. It's an experience.
You're right. I think it's kind of weird to say. I think it kind of transcends it. Because it's such an achievement in cinematic history right now. We've never seen anything like this before.
And it's also dumb fun and funny and like,
it's America's ass. It's amazing.
I love that line so much. It's the best. I have to echo a lot of things that you said because I came into the Marvel Cinematic Universe knowing Marvel characters mostly from the animated series from the 90s, Spider-Man, X-Men, X-Men Evolution, all that sort of stuff. So I wasn't the most well-versed in terms of the comic books. And I remember a year before the Iron Man came out, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about the casting of Robert Downey Jr. And he said, man, you know, it's honestly genius casting, and I think Robert Downey's going to be the guy who pulls it off, and it's going to propel this universe into something special. And he was right. I mean, I remember watching Iron Man for the first time in 2008, having a somewhat of an idea of who Iron Man was, but really just sort of basing everything off of the movie. And then Nick Fury comes in at the end, and he says, like, you know, you think you think you're the only superhero, you're part of a greater universe, you just don't know it yet. And not really understanding exactly what that was, and doing my research and realizing, oh, this could lead to something huge, something that cinematically has never really been explored in terms of superheroes. We've always seen superheroes sometimes reference other heroes, but we've never seen them together in one thing. And like Marvel has played with it a little bit, in like the Incredible Hulk series where Thor shows up. Like they played around with it, but never fully committed to cinema. And then 4 years later, we get the Avengers, and it completely blew away all my expectations as to what one studio could do with all of the characters that they own within one single universe. And it was for the most part, even though it deals with some intergalactic things, it's mostly pretty grounded. It wasn't really until we got to phase 2 where we really start to further explore the cosmic universe, and then going into the mystic arts, and then exploring the quantum realm. By the time we got into phase 3, like, Marvel did such an incredible job training us to accept all these different parts of the Marvel universe that when you get to something like Endgame, and you see, like he was saying, like we talked about it endlessly, when Valkyrie rides in on a fucking Pegasus.
You don't take pause.
You don't pause. You're just like, this is the most epic thing ever.
Yes,
And I think that's what's so impressive.
And it's a fucking Pegasus. Let's stop for a second and recognize that's a goddamn Pegasus.
She's using her magical spear to crack the spine of a Leviathan on top of a Pegasus. It's incredible.
It's incredible.
It's unbelievable. And to see all the legwork that they did, I agree that, you know, there are a lot of movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that, of course, are not perfect. There are, I can't really name any perfect movies. Every movie has something.
Absolutely.
Some little flaw, some little nitpick that you can pick out.
Yeah.
But to see what Marvel has done over the course of 10 years or 11 years, 22 movies, the fact that we're even talking about a cinematic universe that has 22 movies. We talked about in the last episode, Bond is about to do its 25th film over the course of 50-plus years with 6 different actors who have played Bond.
Right.
They're all great. But when you look at what Feige and Marvel Studios have done with all of these different characters, all these different franchises that intersected, and you get to Endgame, and things that were set up in Iron Man, things that were set up in the first Avenger, in Dark World, and all these movies from years and years and years ago, yeah, you know, if you haven't followed these movies, will you be a little lost? I don't really think so, but if you have lived with these movies for 11 years, the payoff is so fucking amazing. For years I've said, I hope that one day in the final movie that Captain America is in, he has the gauntlet and he snaps and all the Avengers rise, you know, behind him as he's saying Avengers assemble.
Right.
And the fact that we got a variation of that where he still gets that while he's wielding Mjolnir was even greater than I could ask for.
Get out of here!
It was so like, we were at that Disney screening, and when he says Avengers, and the camera pans across the field, and you see hundreds of Avengers and Wakandans and Asgardians and Mystic, you know, characters from the mystical realm.
Masters.
Oh my God! And he says assemble. I literally like almost lost my shit.
So
it was such a payoff.
So I was sitting next to you. And I didn't even have to look over to know you were crying because the seat was trembling. The seat was just like going back and forth. I was like, oh my God, Adam's really crying.
I mean, that's what I think is so incredible about this movie is, and Infinity War as well, the fact that it sets up something so big and in the next movie pays it off and does it so incredibly well. It very easily, they could have stumbled and Endgame could have not been as good as it was.
Agreed.
And it is a cinematic achievement, and I don't know if we'll ever see anything like this ever again. And going into phase 4, the next phase or whatever Marvel does next, I don't know if they'll even – I think they're also very aware that, like, this is not something that we can just easily replicate.
Right.
We have to do something new.
Or build up towards again.
Exactly.
I think their plan is going to be very different.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, they said that – I mean, the press releases, if they are to be believed, that they only have a 5-year plan coming up in the next phase.
Yeah.
So who knows what that's going to entail.
I hope an Avengers movie is not a part of that.
I hope
an
not
Avengers
either,
movie
yeah.
doesn't happen until 7, 8, 9, 10
Yeah.
years from now. Can you imagine?
I hope it doesn't happen until we're ready to see another group of Avengers led by Spider-Man or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
So
I want to see Sam Wilson get out of here,
Oh,
man.
yeah, that's true. Sam Cap.
yeah,
I want him to
Cap-
grow into that role and improve.
That's
And
the other thing that I think is so damn impressive. Like,
Yeah.
I think about Chris Evans in particular as Captain America in the first Avenger, really trying to find his place and figuring out the world that he's in and how he's supposed to operate.
coming off of Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
going into Avengers and, like, still not being the leader of that team. It's
Right.
still pretty much Iron Man
Right.
running the show. It's a party still. And then to see him grow from Winter Soldier to Civil War and assuming the role of really being a
captain.
captain
Yeah.
of the Avengers, and to see that paid off in Endgame and getting the ending that I always wanted for him, the happy ending of, like, man, I hope he gets to go back in time and just live. If he gets one life, live part of it with, and he has the opportunity for somewhat of a redo, live it with Peggy. Like, give those two characters that closure. And I was so happy at the end of that movie and the way it ended and how we got to send off him, Widow, and Iron Man. I thought I was very satisfied. So.
Yeah.
Same.
To say this movie is good is really undercutting it. I mean, it's going to echo everything you guys have said, but we are fortunate that we live in a time where the technology has caught up with our childhood dreams. Like, we can see all of these characters fully realized in one gigantic, massive movie.
Yeah.
And to see Captain America pick up that goddamn hammer, I lost my... I screamed
Lightning uppercut!
so loud. Shield combo, shield bash, hammer throw. Oh, gee, lightning strike. So when things like that happened to me, it gave me the feeling of when I was reading comic books back in the day again. It reminded me of the reason why I loved comic books, because they showed us the fantastic. They showed us the amazing things when we were at such a young, gullible age. And to capture that with people who have been in this field as long as we have, and been reading comic books and into these stories as long as we have, I don't know if it gave you guys that exact feeling, but for me, it totally hit all those things that I felt as a child and why I loved all these things so much. So and once again, I'm gonna kind of echo it, but I feel like this is more than just a movie. It's some of my favorite television moments are when they do those montages, like where they go back in the past, or like when they mash up episodes, or like whatever. This was that, but it was also everything that they showed. They did not pull punches on, especially when it came to the final fight. Like everything was a comic book nerd's wet dream, basically. Like it was, it was, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you wanted to see, this is everything we wanted to see, and it makes me understand why they didn't show it to us before.
Yeah.
Which makes me like every other movie so much more at this point.
They could have had Cap lift the hammer in the first Avengers
That's
movie.
what I'm saying.
You know, and they knew, they're like, nah, we got to save this.
Right,
or the end of Ultron.
Yeah.
And
like,
we
nah,
we also have to give it to...
Right when he does, and Thor's like, I knew it. And you're like,
yes! Yeah. We also have to give it to the team at Marvel, Feige, and all the people that are around him, to have the foresight to go to Disney and say, look, guys, we are going to build this, but it's going to take 10, 11 years to do this. Are you down? And they took that risk, and look at how this is paying off. Like, this movie is going
breaking every record.
Break every single record. And not only that, but also completes a 10 to 11 year movie story arc, which is a giant achievement in itself. So, yes, this movie is good, but what it represents in the greater universe of superheroes and of cinema and everything, I think it's a gigantic achievement that deserves to be applauded.
I think it's
no matter what.
I think it's the word that Hector's been using all the time. Potentiality.
Potentiality. Well, they saw it, and it's just amazing.
They unlocked it.
Just real quick before Zach, like, everybody's been praising Kevin Feige as they should be, but I've also seen a lot of people going, it's not just Feige.
It's not.
It's their whole team.
It's his
Luis
team.
Esposito, Victoria Alonso.
head of special
Whoever
effects.
could have told Feige no and didn't.
Didn't say no.
And
exactly.
whoever, and I'll give you another great example, Joss Whedon, what he did with the first Avengers movie, even before he signed on to direct that, he came in and had meetings, and he was like, hey, the first movie should be this, the second movie should be Ultron. Even he had that foresight. Even he had that kind of like...
I mean, the end credit scene was his idea, I think, wasn't it?
Who, Joss Whedon? For Iron Man 1 or
for Avengers with Thanos? Or was that Feige's?
Oh, I think that was Whedon. Thanos. Like, he was the one that wanted to pull from that 70s era of Avengers comics that he grew up with, where Thanos was this big bad. And not just that, even the casting director, Seraphin Haley.
Yeah.
Cast every
so
movie
many
other than Hulk. Think about every perfect casting choice.
Exactly.
That's like one person and like a team, and a whole department.
And we've talked about this many times. Like, one of the biggest successes they've had is they're so perfectly cast. You don't know where Chris Evans begins and Captain America begins. He is Captain America, and that's something that I feel like DC needs to really look at. Is like, and I know that that's a hard thing to ask. It's a hard thing to ask an actor to be like, can you wear this moniker outside of this movie?
In your real life,
outside of a job,
outside of a job, and then we kind of ask that of people here in a way of like, you're signing up to be a representation of an idea. And to do that at that level, and then to see how they take it, RDJ he's fucking Iron Man, and Chris Evans is fucking Captain America, and I don't know how much of that is luck, how much of that is people empowering the actors to
bunch of
say,
things. It's a
you know,
bunch of-
you
yeah.
have control. You
Yeah.
are able to bring yourself into this role.
Right.
All those things together just make this perfect
we
storm.
welcome your contribution as an actor
Absolutely.
to help shape this character. Look at Hemsworth and Thor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially
Oh my
with
God.
Taika.
Yeah.
With
Thor.
Taika coming
that,
in.
and it's he's still Thor.
Yeah.
But the comedy that he's been able to infuse and
A lot of himself
The
into
persona.
it.
It feels like
Yeah.
he's
So-
super comfortable in
yes.
that role, which
so
I
it's
love.
it's so many different
Yeah.
things that are all sort of lining up. It's like the convergence from Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah.
Only in every 100 years or whatever, like in 1,000 centuries, will everything line up to be that perfect.
Yeah.
And even beyond their missteps, which they've had a bunch of, they've been able to work through them, retroactively fix them.
We say
do-
missteps.
You know,
They've never made a movie that didn't make a profit.
yeah.
True.
That's
Very
wild.
true.
22
Very true.
movies.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
fucking insane.
They
Yeah,
never
it's
made a movie
insane.
that got rotten in Rotten Tomatoes,
Yeah.
which
Right.
should not be your barometer for. But again, even for me, the lowest ranked is Thor: The Dark World. We keep coming back to that. Even Thor: The Dark World to me is more watchable than other movies
Yes.
that are parts of huge franchises
Yeah.
from other studios.
Agreed.
Went back,
Because it's
rewatched it
hard
recently.
To make
There's
these movies.
There's a couple things that
Yeah.
didn't click. That
Yeah.
the director just didn't have the chops to do it.
Yeah.
The Thor Loki team up stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's no comedic timing there, and to see that there was a foresight that like we can make this work. Go with it again in 3, and we'll make it work. We can, and then in 3, that's part of what made it so good.
Yeah.
But that's what
Yeah.
really didn't work in 2. The first quarter of that film is really fucking. It's beautiful. It's some of the best cinematography of any of the Marvel films, and freaking Natalie Portman kills it.
She's great.
And her
She does,
role,
yeah.
it had its own vibe for sure. But,
But how
there's
do you
good
feel
moments
about
in that.
Endgame?
Yeah. Give us your
Oh
thoughts.
man,
Zach.
He hugged me after the movie.
I hugged
That doesn't
Pooch.
happen.
We all hugged each
we all-
other
I know.
after the
Oh,
movie.
man.
Hector came over and we were just like, let's just
We
hug
just
it out.
embraced.
I feel like I'm so fortunate that I was now able to be a part of a cinematic experience that the next century will talk about.
Yeah.
This is a cinematic experience. It's not a movie. We just got to see Star Wars in theater.
We did.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did.
We just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
people are
We
going to be
lived
talking
through
about
our
this.
version of Star
Yeah,
Wars.
Take that, Dad.
future kids. Take that.
I saw Endgame in theater, you little
I,
shit.
s- I saw it before anybody else saw
I
it.
went through 22 movies before Endgame.
But you're right, though, because like if you look at something like Star Wars, because of the huge gaps in between every single trilogy, it's been lived out by different people, and not everyone has been able to live through it all together.
We lived it.
We lived it from beginning to
I
at
saw
least this end.
every single one of these
Yeah.
in
In
theater
theaters.
on
Yeah.
opening weekend. I didn't
Yeah.
even realize that till I started thinking about it last night. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, fuck, I've
Yeah.
done this now this many times. And the second that opening scene hits, I audibly gasped. The very opening shot, I knew exactly what they were. I was like, oh, we're going there.
It's
Fuck
nonstop,
you.
yeah.
And then the second he chops off Thanos' head, I was like, I fucking love you guys. I am on board. Whatever you do from here on out.
What's gonna happen?
That's the thing.
What's gonna happen?
I've never been to movies like this, and Infinity War did the same thing for me, and this one even more so. Every comic book movie I've ever seen since then, and I know you and I have talked comic books for so many years, Hector. We've read so many of these things. Most of these movies, you come out of them and be like, some things were left on the floor from my imagination. My imagination put all these things in there as I was reading those books, and we're not there yet. This movie went, fuck your imagination. We're smarter than you. We're going to be even more crazy than you could ever imagine, and you would never expect us to do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that made me so excited to be sitting in that chair, even as a person who's read comic books
Yeah.
since I could read,
Yes.
and has read all of these from that.
You should have been
beginning
able to
end.
predict everything in this movie.
Fuck no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but it's not just about predicting, it's about what they put in front of my eyes,
Right.
that even my brain, when I'm sitting there thinking like, what is the perfect thing that I want to see from this movie? And they went, you're not thinking hard enough.
They're
Yeah.
like, I'll
She-
show you what
Yeah.
you want to
and
see.
and they upped it. And
Yeah.
what it brought to me that made me fall in love with it, that Infinity War didn't have as much, but I'm glad it didn't, because this was a 2-part thing. And I'm glad it didn't, and this is what brought it, is what I loved out of comic books, and what this did better than almost any comic book I've ever read, is remind us how bad we need superheroes,
Yeah.
and remind us why
Yeah.
superheroes are important, and that
Yeah.
when you're facing adversity, you fucking fight it, and you climb over it no matter whatever it takes, and you do it. You beat the fucking bad guys.
Otherwise,
whatever it
Thanos
takes.
should have killed all of us.
Exactly.
This is our world. We got to
And
do
there's
something with it.
sacrifice and there's everything else. Yeah, there's so many lines in the movie that I'm just like, this is a goddamn superhero movie.
Yeah.
And I've been reading these books for years, and the payoff and the emotional weight of the beginning and the payoff at the end is better than almost any comic book I've ever read. You know, and I saw like
Yeah.
Hickman put out a tweet that was like showing all these things and stuff. I was just like, oh my God. And you see all these comic book writers who have helped build these characters over
Yeah.
time. giving their thanks to this movie.
And Jim Starlin had a cameo in the film. Jim Starlin.
He was in the circle, right?
Okay, so
was Jim
that's who
Starlin.
you asked me
Yes.
about. Then I was like, I don't know who that is, Adam. But
Jim
right.
Starlin, creator of Thanos.
Creator of Thanos.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I saw him and I was like, pretty sure that's Jim Starlin.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's just stuff like that. I feel like we just got to experience a cultural event. Like you said, is it a perfect movie? No, but fuck that. I don't want to judge it as a movie.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's a movie. It's
I
a
don't feel the same
cultural
way.
event. It's something even
Stanley's
transcends time.
Make Love Not War. It was a funny little cheesy joke, but like that's going to be his last cameo.
Yeah.
And it's when him in his 70s, and that's very fitting.
Right.
For again the themes of the film, and like you said, a superhero movie. Like as he drives by an army base, make love, not war, man. Like they could have had his cameo be many other things.
Yeah.
And considering where the first of like Iron Man movie started, and where a lot of these movies are actually literally in part funded by the Pentagon. They have to get up. Their scripts have to be approved by the U.S. military for them to be able to use jets and different things. Like this movie had a very strong message, kind of going against that. Kind of to say like this movie was sort of going against whatever the status quo is. Iron Man movies talk about the war on terror and all these different things without reflecting on the United States involvement. It just kind of says, like, in a way, it just kind of says like
his weapons are being used by the terrorists.
They do, but it's like there's not enough of like we have to change the status quo. Like Tony Stark just sort of accepts the world as it is. This movie does not,
right?
And that metaphorical status quo is half of the world is dead. And everybody else moved on. But like you're saying, the heroes are like, this isn't good enough. We have to do better. And part of that changing the status quo is things like handing the shield to Sam. Is things like having all the female characters and be like, this is the future.
Yeah, saying you're not alone. We're on your team. You're not alone. Handing the shield over. I don't care how their own plot that set it up makes that not make sense. I don't care.
Or does it? Let's talk about it.
We'll talk about
it.
But
that's actually my nitpick.
Yeah, but it needed to happen.
Yeah.
And it needs to happen for so many reasons. I don't know. I mean, I think you and I were doing the comic book show when Nick Spencer's run of Captain America came out.
Hell Hydra?
Yeah, not Hell Hydra. When it was just Sam Wilson's first run of Captain America. And the first group of villains, and this is topical right now because of what's in the news, was a group of like militiamen on the border.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who just got fucking arrested by the FBI last week?
People were upset.
And people were upset. And it's just like, and Spencer and Marvel were both kind of like, man, fuck you. Like this, that's what we're talking about. And if Sam Wilson, if a black man is Captain America, he's going to have a different view of America than Captain America does.
White,
And I cannot wait for that fucking movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that one?
Oh,
Falcon and Winter Soldier will soon probably be retconned into Captain America and Winter Soldier.
You think so?
Maybe.
It's possible. It's possible.
But
but we don't know when that show is going to take place.
I want them
either,
to fucking own it. I don't want them to call him. I want it Sam Wilson Captain America.
Absolutely.
Do it. Own it.
I have a feeling that that is what's going to happen.
They
He's
gotta
going
own
to be
it.
captain because there's no prefix to that title. It's you hold the shield, you are Captain America.
They were smart enough to call her Captain Marvel. Be smart enough to call him Captain.
I think they will. I think they will. And I think they showed us that with all the women teaming up to fight. Like everybody knew their role.
I want to know.
So they really know.
I want to know, like, if you went to see this in a theater and people you didn't hear screams in that moment, you need to move. I'm sorry. Like,
you know what?
You're in a place like
you know what the TV show might be. The TV show might be Falcon and Winter Soldier, set in the past, maybe set before Infinity War. I don't know, maybe a little bit after Civil War. But then I still think that they can and should do a Captain America movie where it's Sam.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that it might be something to where it explains their relationship that builds up retroactively, builds up to where the moment where Bucky said, "Go ahead, Sam," and kind of lets him know because Bucky is already like, this should be yours.
I honestly hope
it
goes forward. I'm a little worried that a lot of these things they're saying are going to be like past. I want to be thinking about
filling
the
the
future.
5-year gap
them again.
Yeah, I want to go forward.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was super impressive about the movie, just like Infinity War, it's 3 hours long and it moves.
I felt like it was an hour. Honestly,
I
was like, "Where's the rest of the movie?" I thought this was 3 hours.
I don't feel like people give the writers of these last two films enough credit.
Yeah,
Marcus and McFeely. Yeah,
I think these are amazing screenwriters. Everything is so efficient.
Yes.
Yeah.
No line is wasted.
Yes.
And when you love these characters, when they speak, it's exactly what they need to say. Who needs to say it's like they know exactly what needs to be said at what time and by whom. Nothing is wasted. It is so efficient. It is the most efficient fucking action filmmaking I've seen maybe ever. They need so much recognition.
And the screenwriters, but also the actors. I felt like they were all bringing their A game for this movie. Specifically, Jeremy Renner. I'm not a huge fan of Jeremy Renner or Hawkeye at all. But he had some scenes where I was like, dude, he's got me. Like and then Scarlett Johansson too. And Scarlett Johansson brought it as well. Like everybody brought the heat with their acting games. So the writers, the actor, everybody was on fire.
I think part of the reason that works so well is this is the first time maybe outside of Winter Soldier, and I think this is the Russo brothers too, like giving us them in situations that we can relate to them ultimately. Like a lot of the Iron Man films, Tony Stark's so Tony Stark. It's a little hard to relate to him. But then when we got Winter Soldier, it's like, fucking Natasha's a real person.
Right.
And you need, like, she's a person. And that's the first time she got to be a person. And that came back in this one. Like, just her sitting at the desk and telling Avengers, where are you at? What are you doing?
Eating a peanut butter sandwich.
Eating a peanut butter sandwich. And he sits down. I'm like, fuck yes.
That's a person.
Fuck yes. And Jeremy Renner being like, I'll do it. I'll sign up. Send me back first. You know, like those little moments.
And then eating a taco.
Yes. Oh, my God. And then Hulk giving him one?
Yeah, no, giving him
I'm like, oh, I ship it.
Dude.
It's so good.
Hulk in this movie was
Hulk
so
in this
great.
movie, it makes up for the lack of Hulk that we've had before. Like,
Dude, Malik, my wife went fucking nuts the second he showed up as Professor Hulk.
Oh yeah, me too. I laughed that entire scene when he was like taking pictures with people and just, dude,
he was laughing and all he kept saying was like, "This is the best Hulk."
This is my favorite. It was just
between that and Lebowski Thor.
Oh my God,
so good.
They made some great choices with the characters and showing how these characters have been affected by all the events that happened 5 years prior.
It's like that's the efficiency of the storytelling where we weren't with them for 5 years, but we got to see them grow in our heads. We filled in the gaps.
And we
understood
didn't skip
it, and
a
we
beat.
believed it.
Yep.
We fucking believed it. We believed that Thor went off the deep end with very little setup.
And honestly, I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that the writers had to be efficient. There was an article, and they talked about the same thing that we just did. They made baseball cards that had all of the characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with all the actors, and on the backside it was their availabilities. So they had to look at all 60 of these actors, and they had to say, great, who do we have available who can shoot the majority of this movie? How do we make it as efficient as possible?
And that's why Pepper Potts isn't going to come out and say hi to Steve, and it's going to be Mom's inside, Mom's making lunch.
Yep.
You know,
she sent Morgan out there.
Well, unfortunately, she wasn't on set except for when we could get her on that couch.
Exactly.
And I guarantee that's part of it.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And some of the choices they made, like Tony Stark finally being able to like kind of like move on with his life, marry Pepper, have a daughter, and then hoping that
fucking
the mission
pulling
that they
picture off the wall and looking at it.
I
was
oh man, and still seeing that he's like living with the tragedy of losing the kid, losing Spider-Man.
Not even that
Peter.
though, but really knowing what it's like to be a father now. Like
and understanding
having those feelings first, and then really realizing that when you have a daughter, and then the moment where they came back and hugged, I was like, he understands. Like it was real.
Nice.
How many times have you guys seen it? Twice?
Just
once.
Yeah.
Go again.
Oh, yes.
Obviously.
Absolutely.
I'm
going to go 10 more
it
times.
IMAX.
Second time I watched it, talking about efficiency, the conversation between Tony and Pepper.
Yeah.
When he's
You
like, I
need to
figured it out, by the way. I figured it out.
You need to rest.
Will you be able to rest?
Yes.
Is
Pay
what
off.
she said.
Boom.
If you're able to put a pin in it, Tony, would you be able to rest? And at the end, she goes, you can rest now. We're going to be okay. All of that stuff, man.
Even when she said we're going to be okay, that was it for me.
Yeah.
That was it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just
beautiful.
And then the big thing for me, and like you probably will agree with this, Alan Silvestri's score,
gorgeous,
fucking amazing,
great, fun, great.
He paid homage to us in one song.
He did.
Yeah, apparently.
Tres amigos.
He paid homage to Christopher Beck's AntMan theme.
His
Captain
own
Marvel
theme for
theme.
His own theme for Captain America and Henry Jackman's Captain America theme. That's what I think is so impressive about the scoring. Marvel sort of the movies they have this reputation for the music not having a consistency.
Correct.
And I'm so happy that at least of all the films, the Avengers movies, minus Age of Ultron, which Danny Elfman and Brian Tyler kind of did their own thing a little bit.
Well, building on top of what Silvestri did. But having that consistency from the first one to the third, and then the third to the fourth, but also incorporating stuff from Infinity War into Endgame. And when those end credits roll and they show the original 6, like it was emotional for me. It just goes so high once we get to Chris Evans and Robert Downey, and everybody in the theater just
cheering, and you're realizing like this is the moment where we're saying goodbye to these two actors or three actors in particular.
Yeah.
But it feels like just such a payoff for following this for so many years.
And we're definitely saying goodbye to all of them together.
Yes.
That's
absolutely.
the other thing.
There's no more of that original six.
Exactly.
We already saw him as a hologram he left for his daughter. Where the chances of him leaving a part of his consciousness as
I have a
Spider-Man
feeling that he's going to
Morgan.
be AI at this point. Like,
I-
there's going to be an
you
AI
think they'll do
version
that?
that's
Because they do it in the
coming.
comics every time he dies.
I'm
he
okay with
becomes an AI.
honestly.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it not happening. If
Yes.
it doesn't
I'd
happen,
be okay
I'm
with it not happening,
I'm
too.
okay with
What?
retiring Robert Downey
want that?
fully.
You want it so bad? I liked the message, and I would like more messagey cameos from Robert Downey in the future, or maybe alternate universe cameos, past cameos. But
That's where I think we're
nothing-
headed.
But nothing to where it's the downloadable consciousness. Because even though Arnim Zola got it because he was in the first Avenger movie,
Right.
and he was Basil Exposition in Winter Soldier, but also calling back to the comic book like normalcy that he is. Arnim Zola is normally a robot body with a little camera on the head. So like Tony Stark is not normally AI, even though he has been that. He was that when he went away, he was thought to have been dead, and then like Riri Williams needed like a mentor figure.
Yeah.
So like that would be cool, but I think it would. In the
You
same
think
way
it would
we
cheapen it?
same way we didn't see Coulson in the movies.
Right.
I think it would kind of.
Which I was kind of surprised he didn't
Yeah.
at least have a cameo in this one.
Yeah,
since
me
he's
too.
been like
I do want to talk about one thing.
Jarvis.
that
This-
cameo.
This was a huge deal.
Yes.
First ever time. This movie had a lot of firsts.
unifies.
The first ever time that a character from any of the Marvel TV shows who appeared in the TV show first got to upgrade, got to
To
you
go to
know
the movie,
to graduate to a movie, even if it was just the one cameo. To me, that said, okay, look, the Marvel Studios teams are aware that these TV shows exist. If they have spaces and slots for these cameos, that's all I wanted for the Defenders in the beginning. Was really
I feel like
that.
that's going to happen now at Disney Plus. For
Yes,
sure.
I am just hoping that Marvel Studios and Disney like hears the fans and the fans when they say we love these characters and these actors in the same way that we love Evans as Cap and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. That if you're going to have a Spider-Man something and he has a chance to swing by Hell's Kitchen, bring over Charlie Cox.
Yeah,
If you're going to have
exactly.
an opportunity to look at some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, upgrade the cast of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., man. They've been busting their ass
I
for
feel like
years.
that's going to happen on Disney Plus.
Yes.
But I don't think it's going to happen with any of their shared properties.
Yeah, I
with
think it's going to
with
be in a
Netflix
different way.
Freeform and
Yeah.
Hulu, like we're not going to see the Runaways.
I
and
don't
we're
think
not
that'll
gonna
ever
see
happen.
Cloak and
I
Dagger.
think there's too much red tape, but I feel like Disney Plus gives us the option to be like, this is ours.
At least,
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. So at least ABC. Do you think ABC shows then Agent Carter and Agents of Shield?
I think they're going to set up their own unique opportunities
Yeah.
coming in the future,
So are you
not
saying
with anything
are they
in the
to
past.
recast Daredevil?
So that's the thing. I don't know if they're going to retouch any of those
For a
any of those
long
characters
time.
for a really long time.
But you think when they do, they'll recast them?
What I'm thinking is if they do,
Yeah.
I think they'll recast them. But I think they have some things up their sleeve that we're going to be pretty excited about. That like, okay,
Oh,
so
sure.
we're setting,
I'm almost
things
almost
up.
certain the multiverse is next.
Right, exactly.
you know?
That's what I'm thinking too. Either that or like giving us. Well, they said were already going to give us really deep cuts on characters that like
Sure.
we are probably not even super familiar with. But that is kind of like they're doing this for a reason. Like they're buying out Hulu at this point. Like
Yeah.
there's
That's
rumors that
true.
they're completely buying out Hulu.
Yeah, 90% stake in Hulu.
Right, exactly. So they're setting things up to be able to cross the boundaries for everything.
And
you
I
know?
don't really feel like Disney has so much of a hand in that as much as Feige and his team do.
Exactly.
And Feige and his team being like,
Right.
what do we have access to and does it work for
Yep.
our story?
Yep.
But don't you think that if Feige really wanted to tell a Hulk story, that if anybody had, the big brass balls of Hollywood to make stuff happen, it would be Disney. It'd be effing Disney.
course. Yeah, but I don't think
to
he's-
tell Universal
it
like,
seems
hey,
like-
we want to do a Hulk movie. Let's
Yeah.
figure this out.
Right.
But it seems like he's really big on telling what he thinks needs to be told and then moving on.
Sure.
Right.
You know,
right,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's one
And
of the things
again,
I love about him.
I'm not asking for more seasons of
Yeah.
Daredevil television. I'm just saying if you're going to look, these and especially Endgame gave us these little tiny snippets and moments and Cap lifting the hammer. It's like I don't need more movies where Captain America, Steve Rogers, we got it once. It happened. What would be amazing is you give me once where Luke Cage and Jessica Jones visit Avengers headquarters. Do you know what I'm saying? Just the
Right.
once.
No, yeah.
Just the one thing where there's a thing happening and Spider-Man meets Daredevil. Matt Murdock, just once, because then my imagination can fill in the rest of like, oh, okay, cool. For the times we're not
know
seeing
each
these
other.
characters,
Yeah.
they can like go on adventures or whatever.
I have a feeling that we are going to see that to some extent, but with the stuff that we've seen already and has been canceled and is already kind of established, I don't think that's in the works for any of that stuff.
Yeah, I don't
I think
either.
They are looking forward. They have this new format. They have Disney Plus. They have Hulu now. They're gonna make they already have all the money in the world, but they're gonna make even more of all the money in the world. And so they have plans to do all this stuff. We don't see it yet.
Well, then
we
let
don't
me
know
ask you a question.
what that is.
Why Jarvis? Why did that actor? Why would they bring him back to play Edwin Jarvis in that one cameo
I feel like there were a
moment?
lot of people from the movie that already appeared on that show, though.
Sure, for sure. Haley Atwell,
Yeah.
and some of the Howling Commandos, absolutely. But like, they didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
They didn't need to.
Narratively speaking, they didn't need to have Jarvis say a line in the
But
movie.
I feel like the whole movie about these cycles and where we started and where we ended.
Exactly.
Jarvis is also where Tony Stark started for us.
Oh, for sure.
Exactly.
So I feel like that's kind of like when you're in that moment, it kind of makes sense to have a Jarvis.
It absolutely
when you
makes
think about
sense.
the cycles and everything that's coming down.
Because to Tony, the name Jarvis might have just been. We don't know if he really knew the Butler or not, to what the extent of their relationship was.
Only if you read the comic books, you know.
Well,
that
yeah,
they,
exactly.
Yeah, right,
Only,
right.
but in the cinematic universe, you
Sure.
don't know what their relationship
No, but
is.
I'm saying if you read the comic book tie-ins for the Marvel,
Oh,
for the
it's
MCU,
in there.
they do have little Tony being like helped by
Okay.
Jarvis.
Well,
the human.
then there you go.
Yeah.
So that, to me, it's more of a nod to like tie up loose ends rather than like, look,
Sure.
here's the potential of where we're going.
I feel like it's more thematic even than
Well,
tying
yeah,
up
there
loose
you go.
ends, because you're not getting Vision
Right.
in this, so it's
Right.
kind of like
It's
But-
almost
but
a
Jarvis.
representation of
Yeah.
Vision.
But don't you think that's also kind of my point? Is like there's no Vision in this movie.
Yeah.
So why even have Jarvis? Like I feel like they could have used.
I think it's why you say I am Iron Man at the end. It's kind of
Right.
like it's cyclical.
Exactly.
It's going back
Sure.
to that first Iron Man. You know, we're introduced to Jarvis. You know, there's like this. It's definitely Iron Man's closure.
this is the closing of Iron Man's
Yeah,
story
yeah.
and Cap's, but more Tony. Yeah.
Speak off a little off topic. At you guys' Disney screening, I wasn't expecting this, but I should have. How much people freaked the fuck out when Rescue showed up?
Oh yeah.
yeah, that was
insane.
awesome.
That was
Listen,
badass.
Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow got a cheer when she shows up at the beginning of the film to welcome Tony. Got an applause because she like comes into frame and people were like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think Happy Hogan got one, but he didn't have like a moment
He
like
wasn't
that.
until the end, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when Rescue shows up and she was like back to back with like
That was
so
awesome.
badass.
it was awesome. But
Again,
was
it's that 10
earned.
year, it's that 10, 11 year
Earned.
payoff.
Yeah.
Where you see what happens to Pepper in Iron Man 3 and you hope and you think like, man, it'd be great to see her in armor one day. And obviously Gwyneth Paltrow kind of spoiled it on Instagram.
right.
But still being in the moment and seeing that happen and
Yeah.
seeing them flying around each other.
right.
And
I
then
didn't expect it.
I didn't
Yeah.
either.
expect it.
And
Yeah.
then at the end, seeing the Iron family, basically it's like you have
Yeah.
Spider-Man, you have War Machine, and Pepper saying their goodbyes to Tony. It just felt so appropriate for the closure of that character's story.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How did you guys feel about the time travel element? Did it work for you?
It worked. It worked.
I liked it a lot.
Yes.
I really liked that they called out
The other
Back to the
movies?
Future.
Yeah.
They're like, so Back to the Future was bullshit?
Yes.
That was beautiful.
It was also really smart because the time travel, however wonky and impossible it
Yeah.
might be in this movie,
Yeah.
all it needs to do is be better than and make more sense than Back to the Future, which has
Right.
become cinematic standard.
Yeah. Right,
So
right.
because it did that and was
Right.
able to be like, we're doing it smarter than Back to the Future,
Oh,
we're
right.
like, oh, this is
okay.
smart.
Yeah.
I fucking love just that they had the ancient one
Make
Yes.
a timeline.
say,
Exactly.
here's a timeline. The second, if you don't get everything back the way it was,
Yes.
you've now created a
And
new
it's
branch.
dark.
And we know when that happens, it's like right after that, it's like, oh, Loki just left with the Tesseract.
Yep.
We're getting the multiverse, baby.
Yep.
Like,
That's how he gets his own
Yeah.
show.
yeah,
how
it's
he
like
gets his
that's
own
the
show.
multiverse. They just prepped us and
Yes.
been like, well, you can't. Even if Captain America returns all the stones, the multiverse was just created.
Right,
Loki's
exactly.
gone with the Tesseract.
With the
Thanos
stone.
went back in time from 2014 and dies. Like multiple universes now
Yeah.
created
Have been
and
created.
started.
The main takeaway, even if Steve replaced the stones and Mjolnir to where everything belonged, the two main takeaways I should say are there is an alternate universe where Loki just like teleported with the Tesseract. Now in that world, did those Avengers go get it and bring it back? Maybe.
knows?
So does it course correct? Maybe, but there's that. And then the second one is there is a universe where Thanos, Nebula,
Infinity
and
War never
Gamora
happens. Oh,
went into the future and died and never came back. So does that?
Well-
and also Peter Quill never met Gamora. So like, are the Guardians formed?
But Gamora didn't die, right?
No, she's in the future.
She's in the future
Yeah.
though.
But the
and
point
he's
is
looking
to
for
that
her at the end.
timeline, she's all effectively gone. But so is
Right,
Thanos.
right.
And so with Thanos is gone, does Ronan try to get the Power Stone?
Yeah.
So the events of Guardians of the Galaxy seem to not happen.
Yep.
Everything on Earth probably still happen up to Infinity War, and then that doesn't happen.
Right.
So those are kind of like the two major alternate timelines that were created. Even again, if the
That we
stones
know
were
of.
brought back.
That's if
Yeah,
the stones were
exactly.
perfectly brought
That's-
back, which were very clearly shown. he took some liberties.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
So
yeah, and that's all just assuming that nothing else
and you're
happened
saying
that we
that's
don't
your
know
own
of.
that's your little nitpick.
Well,
Yeah, let's get into those.
Well, my little nitpick was actually it was the Tony coming back and actually picking like the way he decided to divvy out the shield. Basically, I was just like, okay, I didn't really fully understand it. So if you guys can enlighten me, let me know. But I didn't really understand why it went to Falcon in the first place. Like, I know they were buddies, right? Because I felt the connection so much more with Bucky.
Sure.
Because he spent his
his whole life with him.
reason Captain America, when they were doing the cap to cap fight, I forgot about that fight too. Captain versus Captain.
That is America's
He's choking
ass.
him out. He's choking him out. He's like, Bucky's alive. Bucky's alive.
But I also feel like Bucky is a recovering.
Yes.
He's not
Ready.
Fit.
He's
mentally
not Cap
there.
yet.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not
He's a
Cap yet.
recovering
That's true.
assassin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he went down that path.
Right.
Sam, since we've known him, he's a soldier who
Veteran.
volunteered for duty
100%,
to help
yeah.
and
Yeah.
was always been on your left. I got your back.
Captain America
I'm
needs
right
my
there. I'm
help.
on
That
your back.
moment when he's Cap, it's Sam on your left, and the portal opens, it's like, oh man,
greatest.
there's some great
It's the greatest.
callbacks.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe I was just overlooking some things.
Well,
but
it's
that
just
was,
like I feel like Winter Soldier, like we've seen him grow,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
to give it to him and make him be that shield, it's like I'm going to give a Russian assassin.
Right.
True.
That the world
'Cause we
thinks
don't know.
is a Russian assassin.
Yeah.
Even if that was undone and like the truth came out, like he still has this sort of
Yeah, he was a
reputation.
Russian assassin that killed a lot of famous American
But
people.
he also could have given it to him and to sort of like redeem Bucky as well.
the way he did in the
Right,
comics.
exactly how he is in the comics, and also it's kind of Cap's story as well. He was the underdog. Nobody counted him in, you know, until he was given those powers and given the shield.
I think
so.
Sam's always been the underdog too, though.
Sam has always been an underdog
But
as
see,
well.
what's exciting is that I think that TV show will basically justify that.
Yeah.
I hope
Because
so.
it could be the relationship between both Sam and Bucky,
Right,
which
right,
we
right.
saw start in Civil War,
Right.
and in the back of the car where they're just buddy. I hate
Yeah.
you when they're fighting Spider-Man. But like from 2016
Uh-huh.
to 2018, Bucky goes
They're
under
homies.
Frozen,
Yeah.
yeah.
frozen, and then somewhere in 2017 he comes back in Wakanda.
Right.
But maybe that doesn't make any sense. They didn't spend that much time together.
Right.
It has to be post. It has to be post.
Which I think is great.
2023.
Post-snap.
which I think is great. I would love to see those two develop.
Right.
See their relationship evolve and develop more.
I
and
would-
to see
I would-
how Sam adapts to being Captain America. Because remember, Sam Wilson does not have the super soldier serum.
Correct.
He doesn't. No, he's just
How
a
does he
guy
adapt
with
to being
wings.
Captain America
Absolutely.
without really having the abilities of Captain America?
Well, I mean,
and how does Bucky play into that?
Captain America's greatest strength is his will.
Yeah.
He's the Green Lantern of
gets
this
up.
universe. He's
He gets
never
back
going to
up.
back down. Yeah. And so that if Sam has that, then he is Captain America.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Tony or maybe Cap sees that in him.
Sure.
But in the moment while I was watching it, I was like, I feel like it should have gone to Bucky.
Sure.
And in that
Steve
moment,
would have given it to Bucky.
that Steve would have
I get
given
that.
it to Bucky because
I get
they were buddies. Like even though, like if anybody understands an underdog, it's Cap.
Yeah.
Like if anybody understands the potentiality
and
of somebody,
he's always trusted Bucky.
it's Cap, and he's always trusted Bucky, and it was the reason why he was let go of that fight.
But even then, if you remember all those moments where we spent 2 movies, or like Winter Soldier and Civil War, basically fighting over Bucky,
Right.
who in every moment always had Cap's back. It's not Bucky; they're fighting over Bucky, and they're trying to save Bucky and atone for Bucky's sins. But at the end of the day, it's always
Sam
Sam Wilson, who from the
true.
very beginning of
Yeah.
Winter Soldier, I feel like they were setting up his importance of now he's got a friend.
yeah,
He's got a fellow soldier,
a fellow soldier
and
to
somebody
fight
that can
alongside him.
fight alongside, and the fact that Sam every part along that way volunteers,
Right,
Yeah.
right,
and it's just like I'm here, I got your back.
Bucky
sense,
didn't
yeah.
choose to become the Winter Soldier.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
So that's just the hand he was
I mean,
dealt.
it's the end of Winter Soldier where Sam goes, "You're gonna go after him." He's like, "Yeah, but if you don't want to, it's totally fine." And he just goes, "When do we start?"
Yeah.
And it's like he's volunteering, like he wants to have Captain
He's
America's
there,
back.
yeah.
He's devoted
Yeah.
to being there with
I
Cap.
think we all
along
want
the
to
way.
ship Winter Soldier.
I
and Cap,
think that was more
'Cause we
my
want
emotional.
the emotional
Yeah.
shipment there,
Yeah.
but it's like from an actual story, like character development
Right,
part.
right,
I'm like,
right.
I felt like Sam deserved it, and
That makes
and
sense,
Bucky is
yeah.
more like he's still in recovery. Let's see how he recovers.
I mean,
you
we
know?
never really got a full status as to where he was mentally after his whatever
in Wakanda.
cryogenic freeze or his,
Yeah.
his,
His
midlife
healing
retirement
in
in
Wakanda,
Wakanda, which
Yeah.
probably did really good for him.
Yeah.
But we never got that exposition where he
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
what he went through.
I was
So
always-
anyways, what are your guys' nitpicks?
My nitpick is that this movie is not as fun to watch as Infinity War. Even though Infinity War ends on a down note, and it's a hell of a down note, the whole first act of this is really bleak.
I loved
and
it.
I loved
it.
but it's just not super fun rewatchability.
Yeah.
The second
I
act
can
is,
rewatch that
is
shit all day.
time heist shenanigans,
Yeah.
and that's fun time
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah,
max,
yeah.
and I dig it.
Oh yeah, when they first all
Yeah.
shrink down and are like traveling together,
Yeah.
I was like, "This is
Yeah.
awesome! This is crazy!"
Exactly.
And-
I saw the pages in the comic book
Yeah.
right there.
Last night I saw it in 3D, and I'm happy to report I thought the 3D was stellar. It was great, especially
Okay.
for stuff like that. Like
Okay.
it was, and the end battle was sick,
uh-huh.
so good when we're following Valkyrie and then following like Ant-Man and the Wasp when they
Right,
go
right,
into the
right.
van really quickly.
How
Anyway,
badass was that?
it was awesome. But the other thing is that this movie, I know that I'm going to be able to throw it on whenever I want, but like I feel like the strength of this movie is okay. You've taken 22 weeks to watch one of these movies one a week.
Right.
Then you get
You
to,
have.
you know what I'm saying? And I have, and I recently
You
did it.
have,
I spent
yes.
the past 10 weeks
I
watching 2
know.
movies a Sunday.
I
So
know.
that's why this thing hit me as hard as it did, because I
Yeah.
was like, fuck, I just did this,
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
thing. So it's going to be tough to like, I don't know, to just kind of
Like,
watch it by itself.
recapture
I can
that
understand that.
moment.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
nitpick. Is
absolutely.
it'll never be the same as the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
You'll always be
That's
chasing
good.
that dragon. You'll always be
I
chasing
kind
that
of agree
dragon.
with you.
Yeah.
I can put Infinity War on
Yeah.
in the background and just be like, "This is just pure
And then
spectacle."
stop, and
I
then,
feel
you
like
know.
the ending
Yeah.
battle of this one for sure.
Yes.
But I feel like if
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch
I have to
Endgame, I'm gonna be like,
engaged.
okay, I gotta put 3 hours out of
Yes.
my schedule.
Exactly.
And I'm
Yes.
gonna sit down. And I'm
Yes.
gonna be like, all right, I'm emotionally invested.
But not
Right.
even
Start
that.
to
I feel
stop
like
it. Yeah.
I feel like I would have to watch Infinity War before this too,
Yes.
just to get
Oh,
everything all together.
I'm so excited to just double feature these movies
Absolutely.
every time I watch
We're
it.
gonna have to do that in my backyard.
Oh,
double
my
feature,
God.
double feature these movies.
Oh, it's
yeah.
so good. I mean, I can't. The only and they are nitpicks, because to me it didn't break the story. It didn't break sort of the events of the movie, but it's filling in the little gaps of clearly defining how these characters are going to deal with being gone for 5 years.
Right.
Like how does Spider-Man just go back to Midtown High
not
and
what
Ned
this movie's
sees him?
about.
And how does he age?
Not what
Exactly.
How does
not
he
what
know
this
he's
movie's
still a
about.
high schooler?
Like what happened to the world? Did the
Right.
world just stop
I think
functioning?
that's why. I think that's
Far
why
From Home
Far From Home
is the end of Phase
Yeah.
3.
You find
Yeah.
that out. You find
Yeah.
out how they dealt with it.
Yeah.
For all we know, that movie's going to answer those questions.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
How
I
does
hope
how does
so.
the world
They already
come
set
back?
up. He goes into the high school.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
going to
Or
answer
is that
for us.
college?
That was a beautiful moment
It's gonna be
too.
high
It's
school.
It's a high,
right?
it's
It's
high school.
They
Yeah.
already
High school.
established that in the trailer.
And I
Yeah.
guess like the only other nitpicks I would have is like when Wasp comes back, we don't really see her reunite with Ant-Man.
Right.
We
I
just see
actually
her.
really liked that. I liked that moment where the two of them. I liked because everyone else was having these really emotional, like, oh my god, oh my god,
And they
just
he
look at each
has-
other.
He's got a grin that's like,
mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's do
And-
this.
and
You're
she
like, you're
goes,
back.
"You
Let's
got
get
it,
to
Cap."
work.
Because
Yeah.
she made fun of the fact that he called
Yep.
Captain America
Every
Cap.
line
Yeah.
is perfect.
It
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
I like
It was
that
great.
moment, honestly.
I loved it.
But yeah, I think I would say that's really it.
Here,
And-
I have another nitpick.
Yeah.
Here's another nitpick that I don't care about
Uh-huh.
because the movie is so good that we forgive it. But like those little CG helmets.
oh,
Oh,
for
those
sure.
are-
Remember
yeah, yeah.
Iron Man 1 when a helmet was a helmet?
Yeah,
And it's now
and
we're
it
just
went down.
now we're fine with just like
They
where does it-
materialize out of
what
nowhere?
is it?
Yeah.
Or the fact that everybody has a perfectly working earpiece.
Yeah.
At all
Valkyrie
times.
at all times. Valkyrie has one. They're like,
Yeah.
does anybody see an ugly brown van? And she's like, I see it, but you're not gonna like where it is. It's
Yeah.
like, who cares? It doesn't
Right,
matter.
right.
How, like, are they?
So they have
handing
like
them
a million
earpieces?
channel,
Doesn't matter.
like
Yeah.
Or the fact
headphone.
that when everybody gets snapped back in, his cell phone rings, and I'm like, motherfucker, those cell phone towers are gonna be unusable.
Right.
And she like
Doesn't matter.
appeared and is just like, "Hey, I'm just gonna call my husband."
Oh
like,
shit! I just woke up.
Yeah.
Where the fuck was I? Where
It
you at?
does not matter.
Yeah.
because
Right,
we
right.
It doesn't matter.
go along for the ride.
Yeah, and the other thing for me was, I guess, and I had to kind of get it clarified from you and from Emily, was clarification as to, okay, cool, when these characters were snapped back, why didn't they immediately appear? Where did they go?
Right.
You know, and like
Did they all meet up in one place
right
to like
and
reappear?
then I realized, oh, okay, cool. Everybody from Wakanda is coming out of Wakanda. Everyone who
Right.
was on Titan is coming out of Titan.
Yes.
Wherever
Yes.
they got snapped from
They
is
come
where
back.
they woke up.
is where
Yeah.
they woke
Yeah.
up.
and
And
it
then-
took a little bit for all of the mystic
to assemble them.
For all of this to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess, and I don't know, this might be a comic book question, but the way the Infinity Gauntlet actually works.
Hey, let me stop you right there. It doesn't matter. It's comic books also is.
Nobody's going to tell you that.
We don't talk about that.
No, there's
We don't talk
actually a
about that.
video on YouTube about what it takes. It's that one guy that we used to work with at that other company, the guy with the long hair.
Kyle?
Kyle, yes,
Yeah,
Kyle.
Kyle Hill?
Oh.
Yeah,
Kyle.
yeah.
So he has a video and he talks about how the gauntlet is a random number generator that
Right.
is, so it uses like the Mind Stone assigns everybody in the universe a series of ones and zeros. One you survive, zero, and then what happens is the Power Stone activates and then it obliterates everybody.
Great.
So like
Cool,
he
great,
goes into this
fine.
whole half-hour thing, but it's not as interesting as just saying fucking it just works.
I
dog.
assumed that it was whatever you think of. Like if
I thought it was a
if Tony
thought.
Stark
Right,
is
right,
like
right.
or if Hulk is like I want to bring back the Avengers, that's what.
Because that's how it works in
Yeah.
the comics too.
Or the
When
Decimated,
you
I
have the
guess.
full gauntlet,
Yes.
you have
Right.
control of all reality.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, and you can
So
actually
you can-
affect that
I
reality.
just
You
didn't
can
know if
pick and
maybe the
choose.
comic books were like, oh, it's defined this way.
Oh, God,
No,
They'll have those definitions. You can find them, but it always goes back to whatever the story
How it
requires.
adapts to the
Yes.
movie.
Right,
What's the
Which is
Flash-
comic books in general.
What's the
Yeah,
Flash's
yeah, yeah,
speed
yeah,
force?
I just
Right.
that,
What's
that's
the
actually one of
anti-life
mine. I
equation?
wish he wouldn't have snapped. Like you don't have to snap to use it. Like you can just close your fist.
I kind of felt like that was the one thing that was like, because it's said in the comics. I love that they did it in Infinity War, but
Right.
in this, it's like, why are you having to just recreate a snap? I don't
Yeah,
understand.
exactly.
Like
You
that's
don't-
how you activate it.
Yeah.
You don't.
So I
do
had
that.
I had one nitpick in the movie, and again, just like you, it takes none of my enjoyment away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the final battle between Tony Stark and Thanos.
Don't you
Yeah.
dare.
I had a
just kidding.
nitpick.
I'm just kidding.
I had a nitpick, and it's that at the end of Infinity War, Thanos, after he stabs Tony, is like,
Yeah.
and he's like, I too have been cursed with knowledge. I know who you are.
Yeah.
He's saying, I'm as smart as you.
Yeah.
That is the Tony Stark we know doesn't take that lying down, and he's obsessed over it probably for years, and it's like. I wanted that final scene there to be a moment where Tony Stark outsmarts Thanos. It's just like why I don't want to see fucking Batman
Instead
go
of
try to
a-
punch Bane in the face again after he got beat up the first time. I want him to detective this shit.
Instead of
Right, right.
essentially it came down to a fist fight.
It came down to a sleight of hand trick.
Sure.
Yeah.
Instead of it being Thanos puts on the gauntlet that Tony made and him being like, I am I'm cursed with knowledge too. Like
Yeah.
I'm smarter than you, and
Yeah.
I've thought of this already.
This isn't gonna work.
because
Yeah.
Thanos didn't live through that. This is the new one.
Right.
So, but Tony's lived through him snapping his
Yeah.
finger. The fact
Right,
that I
right,
wanted
right.
to see that gauntlet all of a sudden activate some sort of protocol that's like, it's not responding to him, and he can't close his fist, and it traps his hand in. And Tony
Right.
says something like, "Jarvis, release the stones," whatever.
Yeah.
Right, right,
It's
right.
his tech.
Yeah.
And he is the great futurist inventor. I wanted
Yeah.
him to have thought that this could possibly happen, and instead of it being I run up to him and somehow sleight of hand it,
And have a protocol.
and then
for
have
it.
all of a sudden
Yeah.
have it come up, because I was like, that doesn't feel like a payoff to me
Yeah.
story-wise that he sleight of handed the stones to him.
Right.
There should have been a line, there should have been a moment where he's like, I'm smarter than you, and I thought this might happen, and that's my tech that you have on your hand. That's my shit. You're wearing
Yeah.
my suit right
Yeah.
now. I'm in control.
Yeah.
And
That
then he
would've been
still
pretty
does
cool.
it. That's
Yeah.
my only one nitpick, because
Yeah.
I just felt a little cheapened that there wasn't a payoff from Thanos thinking he's as smart as Tony.
Right,
And
right.
I wanted
Well,
Tony to be like, I'm
that
smarter than you.
actually.
Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, it's that would have been awesome, and maybe instead of coming off like a sleight of hand, maybe it was a tech thing that Tony built
didn't
that
show
we didn't
us.
see, because now that I'm again going back over that moment, they don't show us because they want the audience to see Thanos' hand from this side. For
Oh
him
yeah,
to do this,
which I understand.
and for
Right.
it not to work.
But I was hoping he would do that still.
Sure.
And then you could even do that, and Tony has a line, and he's just like, basically saying, "I'm smarter than
smarter
you.
than you." Yeah, yeah.
That's my suit you're wearing."
Yeah.
But you
You
have
think I
to,
didn't think of that?
Exactly.
Yeah, but you have to admit, I Am Iron Man is.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
no, that's
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
He
That's
still
good.
could have ended it with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I just wanted
Yeah.
there to be
Yeah.
like, I thought of this because I'm the great futurist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's who I've been this whole time. That
Right,
was my
right.
Also, some CG is not great as the rest
Sure.
of the CG,
Yeah.
but my God, the amount
But
of
like,
CG in this movie,
it's
like,
all
it's
CG.
fine.
Jesus Christ, that
It's
ending
fine.
battle, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm sure all of that was shot in pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
with,
my God.
with
It's fine.
actors'
It's
availabilities all over the place, and the fact that it works.
It's
is
the most
amazing.
satisfying. The double page spreads,
Yes.
man. We got our
Yes.
double page
Oh my
fucking
God.
spreads.
We did.
Like,
Oh my God.
I feel like they
Yeah.
just went to the office and they saw Ryan Meinerding and Andy Park's art, and we're like, how do we just
Do that.
make that real?
Yeah.
Do that.
You know?
Just make it real.
Yeah.
Just have Captain America staring down an entire army by himself
Yeah.
and not knowing that
So
all the
good.
Avengers were going to assemble.
So
That's,
good.
Jesus
that's the
Christ,
moment.
that was
That's
incredible.
Infinity Gauntlet.
That
That's
is-
Cap
that is
walking
it.
up to
That is it.
Thanos.
Yeah.
and-
I could
So
do this all
good.
day. I could do this all
Standing
day.
up to him.
Also, I think my favorite line in the movie probably ended up being "That is America's ass."
That's a good. That's a
that
good
shit
line.
was so
That's a good line.
fucking
I felt like the
hilarious.
first line of it wasn't as good as the payoff.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
I
The
agree.
first
going-
line, I was like, "Come on, Scott."
As far as I'm concerned, that's America's
Yeah.
ass. It's like, okay, Scott.
Yeah.
And then
Scott's more in love with Cap than like
than anybody
Peggy.
else's. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
My
good.
favorite
The payoff.
lines are everything Hulk says and everything Thor says.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Just those two were.
I
just my
really do
standout
hope that we do get to
characters.
see Asgardians of the Galaxy with Thor
That
and the
would be cool.
Guardians.
That would be cool.
And I'm
Yes,
curious, like, what
yes.
that mission is going to be. It will be a search for Gamora, but
Yes.
like, in
What
what
is that?
capacity is
Yeah.
she still stuck
Yeah.
in our future?
Yeah.
my favorite line, I really love the stuff that Steve said in the group, in the therapy group.
Oh,
you know,
that
really
that
hit
inspirational
me. And
speech?
It's super inspirational for me.
Yeah.
Another big first, too, is that Joe Russo cameoed
That's
as
right.
the first gay character in an MCU movie.
Yeah.
So, again, even that ties into the shot of all the female characters, ties into
And
for me, it's
they
a
know what
promise.
they
of
know
like,
what they're fucking doing too,
Yeah, yeah.
because you don't put that in a scene with somebody random. You put it in a scene with fucking Cap.
Yes.
And
And
Cap
he's fully
responds.
accepting.
Yeah,
of course.
Like he responds empathetically.
Yes.
And he responds as Captain America fucking should.
Yes.
And that to me is where they're saying like we know.
We get
Yeah,
it.
We know.
Yeah.
We get it.
Right.
And we're doing the right thing here, and we're letting
Yeah.
people know this is where we fucking
Yeah.
stand.
We've
Yeah.
taken a long time, sure, but we know it's
Right.
it's the same as them, premiering Black Panther in Civil War
Yeah.
or mentioning Wakanda in Age of Ultron.
Right.
It's them going, yeah, we know, we want to get to T'Challa.
Yeah.
We took too long, sure, yes, but yeah, we know. Here's Ant-Man and the Wasp, first female name in the title. Yeah, we know. Here's Captain Marvel.
Right.
Yeah, we know. We need a Latino superhero.
Here's
and an
fucking
Asian,
Captain Marvel. Oh god, that moment where they all start shooting at the sky and they're like, "What are they shooting
Yeah.
at?" And then you see the glow and you're like, "Oh god!"
That was amazing.
Dude, I loved
was
when
amazing.
when Thanos went like this and Carol was just like, dunk.
Dunk. Yeah. She's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I was like,
He tried to
fuck.
headbutt her. She didn't even flinch.
Yeah, are you okay?
I just need to say one thing.
Go ahead. Say it.
You need a
Say it.
microphone? Come over here and get a microphone.
That moment when Captain Marvel just comes back from the ding dong sky. Well, just it's all about. We talk about this all the time. It's all about payoff and setup. Every single film has setup. It's so incrementally small, you don't even notice it. But they're like, little bit comes for you, little baby. Come back to the to the cottage where you're gonna eat all the candy on the walls.
Is she on screen, Lucas? Is she on? Okay.
Here was the track. You're over here.
Yeah. You got to bring it back.
Bring it back.
We saw Captain Marvel destroy a ship in Captain Marvel, and so when she does it to like this huge warship in this one, you're like, yep, she
Yeah.
does that. It
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
like
Carol.
where
That's
do
what she
these
does.
powers
That's her
come
thing.
From? It's like,
Yeah.
nope, that's her.
Love it. Love it.
All right.
So
good.
So
Adam,
here's a couple
let's-
questions,
let's
and
hit
we've
these
kind of
questions.
talked about them, but I'm curious. These are questions that have sort of been permeating through the internet that I'm
yeah.
curious to see what you guys have answers
Oh,
for.
sure.
What happened to Gamora? Was she dusted, or did she piece the hell out of there during the battle?
We didn't see her dusted.
We
Yeah.
didn't
No,
see
we didn't
anybody
see
dusted.
Because she
20
wasn't bad.
2014 dusted.
Yeah.
We didn't see that. And with how Tony Stark has been dealing with the other characters and what he knows about the other characters, he probably was familiar with Gamora.
Oh yeah, of course. That was
So-
part of the end of Infinity War. And
Yeah,
there's no
so-
reason you would have Peter Quill looking for her on a screen
Yeah,
if you're
if
not
he
going to pay
knew
that
that
off.
she's dusted.
Agreed.
You're going to pay
So
that off.
2014 Gamora is in the
Somewhere.
wild somewhere
Yeah.
in 2023.
She's
In the
confused.
future. Yeah.
Doesn't know what's
She
going on.
hasn't gotten to that maturity level that she was at when we met her in Guardians
She
1.
never met Peter.
She never
Yeah.
met
So
Peter.
crazy.
She was still in the service of Thanos,
Yeah.
not fully like abandoning him yet. So
Yes.
she still has a lot to go through.
Basically, just go watch Shrek Forever After, because the plot of that is that Shrek has to convince Fiona that they were in love because
Yeah,
she's
there you go.
It's an alternate universe.
That's a
It's
good
great.
movie.
Oh,
It's great.
damn.
Go
There you
watch
go.
it.
Did Cap encounter the Red Skull when he returned the Soul Stone? And if he did, how did he actually return? Like, how do you return the Soul Stone?
Bashed
Dude.
him with the hammer because
That
we don't
is-
know what happened
I've-
to the hammer.
I love that question.
That is
Yeah.
Like, does the Red
a
Skull?
question that I'm going to be thinking about
Yes.
way too much.
for the rest of
But
my
like,
life.
does the and also it's like, does the Red Skull even know who who Steve is?
But how
Right.
do you
He
even
does
because
because he knows.
because he encounters him. But like, does this new Red
Here's-
Skull, this
well,
like guardian
here's-
of the Soul
here's-
Stone,
here's the
understand
question.
that?
When he said, Natasha, daughter of Ivan,
Right.
Jeremy, Clint,
Jeremy.
daughter of Edith, he will see
Son of
Steve,
Edith.
Steve, son of Edith, Steve, son of Mary. Like, he'll say,
Yeah.
he knows who Steve Rogers is.
Right.
But will he have a moment where he's like, oh shit,
I'm here because of
apologize.
you.
I apologize for being a Nazi. That was a bad call.
And now look at where I am.
I'm totally not racist anymore.
How do you even
Steve.
fucking return a soul stone? Though?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't
Just
think
hand it back. I don't know.
Well,
ultimately not important for this narrative, but
Yeah.
the Steve meeting Red Skull is very interesting.
Yeah.
And
that's a good
even
question.
more interesting, I'll give you this. When I had a chance to, at the premiere, talk to some of the people at the Endgame premiere, Ross Marquand came up, the voice of Red Skull. And I asked him, like, jokingly, like, everybody's talking about how we're going to save how we're going to save Tony Stark up in space, but who's going to save Red Skull? And he fired back with, like, a legit, he goes, the Rousseau brothers never been telling me that Johann Schmidt is the guardian of the Soul Stone. Once it's out of there, is he free? Where can he
free.
go?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, damn. Like, that actually, in a quick little jokey, exchange, I was like, crap, that's actually really cool. That, like,
Enter Disney Plus.
So if the Soul Stone is gone, when he goes back to Vormir, does it also summon back the Red Skull, like, with the presence of the Soul Stone?
Is he the person who is forever supposed to be the guardian, or
somebody else.
Does the Soul Stone
All of a
reset
sudden,
and need a
it's
new
Malekith
guardian?
the Dark Elf.
Right, exactly.
Hold on. We might get an answer to this in Guardians 4, though, because they've been building a villain that we know is tied very closely to the Soul Stone. Like when you think about
Adam Warlock?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I mean,
Yeah,
Adam
yeah,
Warlock
yeah.
is literally the Soul Stone
He
dude.
literally lives in the Soul Stone.
So it's kind of like, is that? And they've been building that for
what?
2 movies.
We might get the answer because if Peter's looking for Gamora, he's just going to fly to Vormir.
Oh yeah,
Because
that's true.
now that they all know, they have that knowledge.
We're onto something here.
So then that's when we'll see, like, wait,
Ooh.
did Steve put the Soul Stone back? And he did, and we'll either see Red Skull or somebody else or something or whatever.
Right.
Then
More like Dead Skull.
he'll have to deal with him or Adam. Being
Something.
built by Aisha.
But I feel
all
like
that stuff.
that's
great question.
That's too
Yeah.
coincidental.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
have they're going back out. He knows where Gamora died.
Yes.
Fucking
Yeah.
Warlock, who
gonna
is
check
literally that's Mr. Soulstone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's got to be
that's true.
something there.
How many, and we've kind of talked about this, how many new timelines, if any, were created by events of the movie?
Like
Too
I
many.
said, at least 2, unless
That we know of.
unless we're counting the Loki disappears as the same one where 2 years later Thanos disappears. Like that could also just be one alternate.
I don't
it
know.
Could be. It could be. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's probably at
2
least
separate times though.
Yeah.
Right, but what if in
Because
the
the
Loki?
second Loki
What if they're
disappeared, that
generally
one
part of the
changed.
same
Right.
linear timeline?
What if in the Loki TV show, that show explains where Tom Hiddleston Loki goes with the Tesseract? Either the Avengers go get him, or he goes on his own adventures.
Right.
Gets to a point where he realizes what happened, and he willingly comes back to 2012, the second afterwards, with the thing on his mouth, with the Tesseract, and he's like, I'm sorry about that, and then like decides to set everything right. Maybe because he goes through a heroic journey.
That's a very
to
not
then
Loki
where,
thing to do.
It's
Right,
not
but
it's a
it
very
was
fake thing for
just-
him to do, and then have something else
just
set up.
like how in Ragnarok he shows up and he's like, "Yo, Savior is here." That's not a Loki thing to do. He was heroic. He showed back up, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the scene where again,
but it
the
also is
Straczynski
like
run.
he does
where
that
he's
because
messing with
he's
time.
got
Yeah.
an audience of Asgardians.
You're right.
Who,
You're right.
like there's still that element of narcissism there.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm saying at least 2. I'm saying at least 2.
and I know a lot of people also. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, but I was gonna say that ties into though. Do we think the timeline that we're on?
Yeah.
Peggy would have known about Cap. So the timeline we're on.
No, because I think the way that they explained it was whatever present you were in, regardless of what you do, when you go back in time, that still is
Correct.
your present.
But he got married to her. So this is still your presence. He's still in our timeline, though.
In another universe.
But how is he now in our timeline handing off a shield?
Because he has the coordinates. And
So you think he traveled?
maybe.
I
He
think
grew-
he,
yeah.
as a 97-year-old man,
Yeah.
like a few hours before they gathered there in the woods,
Yeah.
he popped back with some Pym particles as
Yep.
a 97-year-old man from another universe where he was married to Peggy, maybe had some kids, lived a long life, and then came back to like deliver the shield, and then slowly walked over to that park bench, sat down, and just waited for them to do their stuff, and then showed up and was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
here you
Plus,
go."
I also don't think I think
think that's possible.
I think he just went back in time in our timeline, which means that Captain America still gets frozen, still becomes Captain America.
but Steve
all
was
the
there
events
the
play
whole
out the
time.
same.
But in
but
those
old
movies-
Cap, has to kind of like avoid him.
Yes. So
So when
what-
Peggy's in the hospital and
Yes. What Adam's talking about is the second potential, the potentiality here. The second option is if it's not Steve just hopping from another universe back into the original one to give the shield to Sam, the second option is Steve Rogers goes back, sets everything back, puts the stones and the hammer back where it belongs, and then decides to, in our timeline, the one we're used to, go
Stay.
back to the 50s, a little bit after he's gone, and marry Peggy, and then changes his name. And
Right,
then,
right,
because we
right.
never know who Peggy's husband is.
Yes.
Right.
So when Peggy's in that video of saying, like, Captain America saved my husband, she's talking about Steve Rogers, and she's lying. And then her and Steve have to lie for decades and make sure to avoid things that would let people know, like, holy crap, she married Steve Rogers.
So she never ever says who her husband is.
Correct.
Correct.
You see? So that's and then
Motherfuckers!
Now this is sad and this part's fucked up. But think about this for a second. In 2014,
when he goes to visit her,
old Steve, who's also Steve at this point, old, he's there. He's in the background.
Yeah.
Maybe because Peggy was on her own. At some point, old Steve fakes his death.
Yeah.
To be like, Peggy's husband died, and now Peggy's older, and then she meets Steve again. And then here's the really, really fucked up part. Either with her Alzheimer's, genuinely forgot that she married Steve and had a life. So when she remembers, it's really you're back. It's sad. Or she's fucking with him and is lying. Do you see what I'm saying? And like, and she's lying.
Know, Let's hope it's the Alzheimer's. Let's hope it's the Alzheimer's.
Right, but like those are the two potentials.
Right.
Is that
because he still becomes Captain America no matter what, because he's still frozen.
Right.
But there's two Steve Rogers
the whole time they're lying.
Yeah.
Right.
And they kept everything secret.
Exactly.
And
I'm guessing the secret thing is.
Uh,
That's what I want to believe.
Who was the kid at the funeral? Somebody literally yelled this out at the very, very end of the credits.
It was Lucas, huh? Lucas yelled it out?
There was a guy who was like, who was the kid at the end of the funeral? And we're all like, it's what was his name?
The kid from Iron Man
Harley?
3. Harley Keener.
Harley Keener.
Yeah.
It was the kid from Iron Man 3.
Ty Simpkins from Jurassic World.
And then the final question.
Looks like somebody used to watch every MCU movie.
That's what I said. I was like, someone didn't do their marathon.
Gotta watch them all.
What do you think happened to characters like Agent 13 and Everett Ross? Did they just get snapped back?
Ultimately, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
until we see them again. And really, this question, let me bring it over to Aunt May for a second.
Sure.
I think we talked about this before. I have a theory, not confirmed, that Aunt May was also snapped.
Yes.
Why? Because can you imagine a world, a Spider-Man movie, where Aunt May sticks around for
Ages
5 years,
5 years,
and Peter's gone, and then he comes back? Like, their relationship is...
Yeah, I think she was snapped too.
So, just to keep things simple, right? So that they both come back.
I think Genki was snapped too.
Yeah,
I think it's
his
going to be
name's Ned.
Yeah, sorry.
Always.
I agree.
Oh my God!
Yes.
Fucking comic books.
I bet you a lot of...
I bet
yes.
every one of his friends in the next movie, they're just going to be like, they were all snapped, which kind of feels cheap because it's supposed to be 50%, but I think just for the sake of story, it's going to be like...
But then you look at Iron Man, and none of them were snapped. Like Pepper and Happy and stuff.
And Rhodey.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that will exist for... simplicity's sake, but if they wanted to do storylines with any of the supporting characters, any of the other characters, where some were snapped, there's a story potential there. Yeah, what if Sharon Carter was gone for 5 years?
Yeah.
What if Everett Ross
is gone now.
was gone for 5 years along with T'Challa, and he comes back? Like, what is the CIA like 5 years after it's like half of the Earth?
Right,
like,
exactly.
all of that stuff is interesting, but it's not necessary for this movie.
Right.
It's just fun to speculate, to be like, okay, in Black Panther 2, what's the sitch?
Yeah.
Like, Shuri was gone, T'Challa was gone, but not Okoye, and not M'Baku. What was Wakanda for 5 years? Was Ramonda snapped as well? Was she leading the Queen? Like, what's Angela Bassett like if she, and again, maybe they'll make things, for simplicity's sake, be like, we don't want to do that dynamic, but maybe we will do dynamics where when T'Challa's doing something, M'Baku will be like, you weren't here for 5 years. Like, that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
So they have all that to play with.
Your mother had to pick up the reins.
Exactly.
Or M'Baku had to take over for a little bit.
For sure.
Jesus.
I mean, Okoye, like, it's all like, I want to see that, but not important for Endgame.
No.
Also, I mean, how great was that one scene, though? Even though half the people are gone, when they're reporting in as Avengers from around the world, I was like, this is a fucking Avengers movie.
Yeah.
They're still they're still out there. They're still like fucking protecting and making sure the shit's okay.
Yeah.
I will say though, this isn't really a nitpick, but these motherfuckers are out here acting like it was the leftovers and all these cities are dead empty and stuff. And I'm like, really, you snap out half of the U.S. population, it's the same as like 1969.
Yeah.
Because we've overpopulated so fast and grown so fast. But they're acting like these cities are just like dead fucking empty. And I'm like, there's still millions of people in San Francisco. There's still millions of people in these other places. So
some small towns might be a little smaller, but some cities are now livable. Like,
exactly.
LA traffic is a lot lighter.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, the trains are running on time in New York. That's amazing. Like,
Tons of jobs for everybody.
Everybody's eating. Thanos is kind of right. Shit.
The oceans
are getting cleaner.
Yeah,
that's right.
A bunch of whales on the way over here. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
exactly. Cleaner water.
Everybody comes back, the whales are like, fucking fuck.
This is amazing.
All this
I got more
gar-
water to swim in.
You guys love no plastic in the water? It's
But
great.
then everyone comes back and they're just like, ugh.
They're like,
Cool, I'm going to die.
Aquaman has to do all the dirty
I have
work.
garbage in my stomach now. Great, thanks.
Does anybody have any other final closing thoughts about the movie?
I feel like we can talk about this for 3 days straight.
All so much. I do want to ask one quick question. What do you think they set up for what's next? Outside of characters,
Sure.
I mean,
Overarching
Phase 4 predictions.
With the way everything went down, I think that Phase 4 is not going to be what we had for Phases 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
You know, even phases 2 and 3 technically didn't end with an Avengers movie, but they feel like they did. You know, even though Ant-Man and now Spider-Man Far From Home are going to like wrap things up, it still feels like that's what it was, the build up towards and then the payoff.
Yeah.
I think phase 4 might be like, how many movies was phase 3? Phase 1 and 2 were 6 apiece. How many was phase 3?
I think
like
phase
9?
3 was 9.
9 movies.
Yeah.
I think we might straight up get 8 or 9 movies over the next 4, 5 years of just character build up, small moments, personal stories,
Which makes
flashback movies, you know.
And as a comic book reader,
Yes.
don't you find it interesting that the last 8-9 years of comic books do feel like testing grounds for ideas for the movies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's a lot of things they've done that have ended up in the movies. Even the line about being in the Endgame is in the Avengers Time Runs Out storyline from Jonathan Hickman.
One of my favorites, Hell Hydra from the comics, and they made it awesome. And the
fucking
That
audience
scene was
yeah.
so
lost it.
good.
So good.
Such a controversial.
And it feels like there are some
Yeah.
testing things going on there of the heads of Marvel and Quesada and some others being like, this is fucking throw it in there.
Write some shit. Let's
So
see
it
what's
makes
up.
me like, now that you're saying that out loud, I'm like, are we going to get, do you remember when Hickman, his first book for Avengers, the very first one?
FF? No, the one where
The
it was
very
like
first Avengers issue where
New Avengers.
it starts with Captain America and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And they're like,
We
it
need
starts
a-
with
we
an
need a
idea.
team. Yeah, yeah, I
And
remember
it's
that.
like, we're going to make an Avengers world. What if
Yes.
Phase 4 is Avengers world?
Could be.
And it's like after because it makes sense to start it. You lose Tony.
Yeah.
You lose Cap.
What's next?
We're going to make an Avengers world, and it's in memory of those two.
Yeah.
And now the next phase could be literally introducing all of these new fucking characters
Yes.
and new
from
things
different parts of the world.
that are
Yeah.
going to, like, we're building the Avengers world. So whatever comes next, we're ready.
Absolutely.
Because we weren't ready the first time.
Yeah.
You know, we learned we
Yeah.
weren't ready. Now we're going to make an Avengers
We're
world.
going to be the Prevengers. We're going to be proactive.
Yeah.
I think so, and I think that and a part of that is also meaning smaller stories. Because I think the mistake would immediately
Right.
be like, all right, we got the rights to it now. Next up, Galactus.
Galactus.
It's
But
like,
you got
stop.
fucking
Yeah.
Eternals coming.
Yes, but
Right,
that
right,
could
right.
be still be like personal because it's like secret. Do you know what I mean? In the
Right.
way that like people think of the X-Men as like, don't do the X-Men, it's too much. And I'm like, no. The X-Men could be a movie about 5 kids in a mansion that nobody knows about in upstate New York. That's the first X-Men movie, right? You're thinking X-Men in the 90s. I'm thinking X-Men in the 60s.
Yeah.
So like it could still be personal and could still be meaningful. And I think that's the way to go is they're going to, over the next phase 4 is less spectacle and more like character work and really strong, grounded character stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
My
I
only
think
my only
that's
other
it.
theory was possibly the multiverse setup.
Yeah.
And possibly because that could tie into Eternals. You start bringing in the elder gods of space and everything. You know, like
Right.
massive changes have been made to timelines
Yeah.
and to all of space.
The bill
Right.
comes due. That's what Baron Mordo says. in
That's
Doctor
true. The
Strange.
bill does
The bill
come
comes
due. And then also
Should we tell Legend
Thanos
4?
put out power levels that
Yeah. Yep.
were readable by everybody.
Yep.
So he woke some people up with that.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
and bringing the Eternals in like that can directly come off of that and keep building, which is interesting if they just keep building immediately. When you think about what could be the next big bad, I think Eternals could set that up for sure.
it's
Yeah.
possible.
I think by changing timelines, Kang is also a setup for sure.
Oh, I would love Kang.
Dope.
Because that's I
And
mean directly
Young
like
Avengers is Kang. Like the Young Avengers could get started now with Cassie and
Right,
you know
right.
with all the characters we're mentioning, and even within, I think we're going to see an Iron Girl or Iron Lad or Iron
think
Iron
you're right.
Woman
Yeah.
in 10 years, and it's going to be the Morgan character.
Right.
That is Tony's daughter. Like
Right.
I think they're already planting that seeds. And if we see Young Avengers like that, we could see an Iron Lad show up, and he's Nathaniel.
we know we're
Richards.
getting Kate Bishop probably.
Yeah,
Most
exactly.
likely, yeah.
So yeah.
And also Kang would be great because they think they have time travel figured out
Yeah.
because they're
And
like,
then
hey,
there's
we
somebody
saved
like,
the world.
I'm the time
It's
master.
like, bitch, you don't know
Yeah.
about Kang? What you know about Kang?
I've been spending my life keeping this
Yeah.
shit under wraps.
You think
And you think you can fuck with it?
What you
can
know
fuck
about
with it?
Kang?
I was Ramatut, okay? Don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with me. Like you're like, damn, this guy.
You don't know
knows
shit about time.
Kang's a great villain,
Oh,
but I
a
good
also
villain,
wonder
yeah.
if like
tough script to
if
write.
it's
Yeah.
exactly because you
Yeah.
you just did time travel, so
Yeah.
it's like, do you make your next big
No,
bad
you
time
don't- you
travel?
don't make it
but
time
also,
travel.
Yeah.
do you show that there's repercussions for
Yes.
it? Because
That's what
by
I'm
doing
thinking.
time travel, how do you keep from now solving every problem being like, well, let's go back
Let's
in
just go
time
back
and
in
we'll
time,
fix
yeah.
it and we'll
Yeah.
change
What
our
if
timeline?
what if they
Kang
change
comes in as like,
Nope.
Yeah.
Can't fuck with that.
Yeah, what if Kang is more a time guardian rather than
Yeah.
like I'm the
Could be.
master of time and I'm going to manipulate
He's
it to
like,
do
you're
whatever I
the
want?
Thanos
Fucking
for
with
time.
They've
Exactly.
now put Earth on the galactic map, which is one of the things I fucking love from the comic books.
Yes.
All of the goddamn universe hates Earth because it's the center of everything, and it's
Yes.
always fucking Terra. It's always fucking
The Supreme
Terra.
Intelligence, you know, the head of the Spartax Empire,
Right.
the head of the
Annihilus?
Yeah, the negative zone.
I feel like
I want some Annihilus shit up
I
in
feel like
here.
we need to do
Now the quantum
I
universe.
feel like we need to do
Give me the
another
cosmic rod with the
post,
giant insect.
another
Yes.
post-snap recap
Yeah.
where we take all the cards of all the events of Endgame and we try to figure out what timelines were created, what are the potentials for story.
I think that sounds like a Patreon goal to me. That's what I think.
Am I going to have to create 3,000 new cards now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, no.
It'll
hopefully
be
not.
months from now. We'll
I will
make it
say
good.
my final thoughts on this movie. I was so happy and relieved, and I felt like the 10 years of build-up and the 10 years of following these films, I got the payoff that I partially wanted, partially didn't even know I wanted, and it just felt like such an appropriate way to send these characters off, even with some of the nitpicks and some of the little things that people will probably be talking about and claiming, you know, all these things about plot holes and all that. At the end of the day, I had such a good time, and the way they sold it to me, it worked for me. I was happy with how it was resolved, and I can't wait to see how we continue the adventures of all these characters, either on Disney Plus or cinematically.
Yeah.
Well said.
Good question for you. When's this going up?
This is going to go up on Patreon
When?
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, and then when?
Probably
YouTube?
Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. I was going
Let
to
it
announce
bake over
what we
the
were doing
weekend.
on
Yeah.
Sunday,
Oh,
but
yeah, but not
well, the
this
page-
time.
That's what the episode's for.
Well, we're going to do an episode after this, so.
well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
great.
Anybody else have any closing thoughts about the movie?
I think you said it
Ditto.
well, and we've talked for a really
Forever.
long time about everything.
Forever,
So.
forever.
I can't wait to see it
Yeah, I
again.
can't wait to
Yeah.
watch it over
I
again.
I
I
just
can't
over
wait
and
to go
over
see it in
and over
IMAX
again.
and then
Yeah.
see it in 3D. But guys,
best.
because this is the spoiler review, go ahead and leave your comments down below. Spoilers abound. So to anyone who has not watched it, the movie yet, good luck.
Go to town.
But guys, subscribe. YouTube.com/HyperRPG. Check out our Patreon. Patreon.com/HyperRPG. Maybe we can make a Patreon goal about doing a post-snap recap and exploring some of the new timelines.
Post-snap universe recap.
That's right. That have been potentially established in the Marvel Cinematic
Yeah.
Universe. And let us know where you think they're going to go next. I'm so curious.
Annihilation Wave.
Man, what a great wrap-up. Thank you guys so much for watching this very in-depth review. And we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.